Well, what is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Thank you so much for joining me today. Do me a favor, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. I would love to have you here on a regular basis. Also, hit that like button. It's just right down there. It helps support the channel. It is a small thing, but it's big to me. Thank you so much. All right, let's get to it. Now, since you probably read the description on the video before you opened it, you know these knives are not what this video is about. But these are my, up till recently, custom folders. I have a very small collection of customs. I'm not a huge custom guy, but every once in a while something catches my attention and I'm really excited to bring it into the collection. So what are these? Well, there are videos on these on my channel already, but we'll get to those in a second. This is the full custom DX2 from Alien Knives. It is Nitro V steel with a hollow grind. It is all titanium. This is actually running on steel washers. He has recently made the change to phosphor bronze, so that'll improve things a little bit. The action's a little sluggish. This is a bit rough, but I love it for that reason. It is evidence of where Luis over at Alien Knives is gonna go, and I'm very happy to have this in the collection. My hope, of course, is that 10 years from now, well, let's not say 10 years, let's say 5 years from now, I'm able to get another one of these and do a straight comparison to how he has improved as a knife maker. He has definitely got the eye for the art, and he is rapidly coming to a place where he's got the skills to make them. This is just a really great piece. So there's the Alien Knives DX2 Custom. This, of course, is a Gavco Mako full custom. It is AEBL steel, zirconium, titanium. This is a stellar cutter. Really holds an edge well and cuts like crazy. Action's a little slow. And then this is a Hoback A10, an S90V. This is a love it or hate it knife. I recognize that. I love it. You either love the way this thing looks and feels in hand or you don't. I do. This is just a great knife. So, what's the point of all this? Well, let's put these here. Recently, I had a very expensive knife that I wasn't that in love with. So I started looking around to sell it or maybe trade it, and then I found somebody who had this at a knife club that I belong to. This is a full custom. This is a Nick Chuprin and Robert Carter collab. This is the NCC MK1-RC. Wow, does that roll off the tongue? God. We're going to call it the MK1 from now on. So the MK1 here is what's called a bro lab because it's Robert Carter and Nick Chuprin. They got together and they took kind of a Robert Carter blade and a Nick Chuprin handle and a little bit of vice versa, and they got together and they made this. It is Nitro V. It is all titanium, except the pocket clip and the backspacer are zirconium, which is very cool, and it's not super shiny zirc. It's a little bit like this one. It is done in a dull fashion. Usually zirconium is polished up too much. This looks just fantastic. And look at this blade. Look at it. I love it so much. For those of you that know, the 229 Chavez is one of my favorite production knives. I have a Tanto version and I have the drop point. This blade shape is one of the reasons I love those knives, except this knife is older than those by quite a bit. And it's got the Robert Carter little thumb divot right here. Plant your thumb. This is just a spectacular piece. And I want you to listen here. Listen to the close. And the snap on the open. Oh, God, this thing is good. So now I have a fourth full custom. We're going to go ahead and put these to the side and focus on the MK1 here. Again, the NCC MK1-RC. Anyway. Full customs are a funny thing. The others that I showed you range in price from a few $100s up to about $550. This, if you can find one, is selling online for between $1,200 and $1,500. That's more knife money than I have, period. But because I had an expensive piece that I had traded out for other stuff for originally, I had the capacity to bring this into the collection. I would not have been able to afford this otherwise. So what do you get? Well, you get a handmade knife that is as well done as any of my high-end factory knives. Now, when people talk about high-end factory, we talk about Millet and we talk about Riot, companies that really know how to put a knife together. This is everything one of those is, except it's handmade. And that is astonishing, because my other handmade knives all have little, well, they don't feel factory made, let's put it that way. So maybe that's the price difference between a $1,500 and a $500 custom. I don't know. I don't have enough of them to really have an opinion. But I will tell you that this thing is really well done. All of the edges are chamfered off except right where you want it to be sharp. And it is very sharp. The hollow grind is perfect. It is dead even on both sides. The plunge is perfect. The grind is perfect. Everything about this knife is done just so very, very well. Now, it does not have a steel lock bar insert, which I wish it did. I'm not a huge fan of titanium right on steel, but the fitment on this thing is just ridiculously good. And again, oh, that snap. God, that is really good. It has the Chuprin logo on this side and the RC for Robert Carter on this side. Beyond that, it is clean, right? No logos, no nothing. Now, this one is not perfect. It's got a little bit of wear right here. You can see that in the light. You know, and a little across the back. So that's interesting. Sometimes when people buy and want to sometimes when people want to buy or trade or sell customs, they have to be immaculate. But the problem with that is it means nobody ever carried the thing. All right, my customs all came used except for the DX2. All of them have got wear marks on them. All of them have been in somebody's pocket, and I love that, because no matter the price, if you're buying a knife just to be just to sit on a shelf, that's fine. I mean, if that's you, that's great, but I don't do that. I carry everything I own, which does bring up a bit of an issue that we'll get to later with the MK1. So let's get the specs out of the way on this really, really well-made custom knife. You get what looks like 2.9 inches of cutting on just a little over 3 inches of Nitro V. The grip area from behind the flipper tab is 3 3/4, which means even though this is a smaller knife, the fitment in my hand is perfect. It is really good. Overall knife looks to be 7 1/4, which is a really good length. The Zerk pocket clip is really well done. As you can see, everything is knocked down and very smooth. It's got plenty of ramp and plenty of room in there. The only thing I wish is that you didn't give up this much knife, because I'm 100% sure it's because of that lanyard hole. Now, for those of you that lanyard, there you go, there is one. I don't, so I'd have been much happier if this clip was moved up another 1/4 inch, right? That would have been ideal for me. If that hole wasn't there, the clip could have been right there. Could have come down the same distance, and this would have been a lot more deep carry. That would have been really ideal. But surprisingly, nobody asked me, so here we are. For $1,500, it better be perfect. And I don't mean visually. Like I said, it's got some wear on it, and good, it should. It's a knife. It's supposed to be used. What I mean is, for $1,500, it should be perfect in the bevels, in the grind, in the swedge. The Tanto, which is a really nicely robust tip up here, the tip is still perfect, right? The lines for the grind are perfect. That is what I'm talking about. And I gotta tell you, they nailed it on this knife. Now, you can get versions of this that have a zirconium ring or a Timascus collar around the pivots. There are fancier looking versions of this knife, but I wouldn't have wanted one of those. This one is, I mean, come on. This one is all me, right? So, it is not a big knife, and yet it is very comfortable. It is a very expensive knife, but because it's handmade, you can see why, right? You have two choices when you're making something by hand. You go quick and dirty, which is less expensive, or you spend a lot of time on the little details, and since time is money, the price goes up. And this is representative of that. Let's do some size comparisons with some knives you may be more familiar with. Here it is against the Bug Out, and you're going to notice something right away. If you are a fan, let's move this up here, of Bug Out size knives, the NCC MK1-RC, or MK1 as I call it, is a really excellently sized knife. But because the handle is a little thicker and a little taller, it is much more comfortable in my big old hands than the Bug Out. This is, I mean, it's a great knife, but this is something else. Here it is against something really big. Here it is up against the Adamas. Right, as you can see, the Adamas just dwarfs it because the MK1 here is not a big knife. Here it is against the Rat Model 1, again, much bigger than the MK1 here. And here it is against something smaller. This is on loan from JB. This is the Finch Runtley. So there it is against a little tiny knife, just for giggles. I do want to say that I can't swear that this will be in my collection forever. And that's not because I don't love it, and it's not because it's not exceptionally well made, and it's not because it's not beautiful. It is all of those things. But I kind of have a rule about my knives, and that is that I tend not to keep stuff that I can't afford to replace. Okay? So this Mako's about $550 on the used market. If I was carrying this and I lost it, I would be devastated, but with a little time and some effort, and maybe selling some knives, I could afford to replace it. If not with this exact one, then one of the other amazing, right, Gavco customs. Same is true of this hoe bag. I don't want to lose it. I have no plans on losing it, but if I did, these are about $550 to $600 on Arizona Custom Knives. So if I lost it, I could sell 2 or 3 other knives, put a little money aside, and get another one. They do pop up. Or I could get the A8 Slim, or you get where I'm going. There aren't other versions of this except fancier ones. So this $1,500 knife, let's say it's $1,200 knife, $1,000 because of the scratch, whatever. If I lose it, I will not be able to replace it, period. Because I would have to sell 7 of my other knives. My average knife price is probably $200. I'd have to sell 7 of those and then desperately try to find one that wasn't the full $1,500 and then desperately try to find one. You get the point. I don't tend to own, collect, or carry knives that I can't afford to replace. And while I love this knife, and I don't plan at this time on selling or trading it, the truth is I can't afford to replace it, which kind of puts it on my move it along radar. I don't know. We'll see what happens down the road, right? For now, I'm really glad to have it. In a way, I'm super glad to have it because it helps me understand, I'm like most of you. I see these custom knives on Instagram and on knife pages and stuff going for $1,000, $1,200, $2,000. And my first instinct is always, what are you talking about? It's a pocket knife. But then this thing landed, and suddenly I kind of understand where that additional dollar value comes from. It isn't just the name, although that is part of it. It's the build quality. And this thing is absurdly well done. It has to be for that kind of money. And I think they know that. Excuse me. So let's get the other fundamentals out of the way. How much Nitro V do you get? Well, it's chamfered, so it's hard to see. So let's go ahead and get an accurate measurement here. It is 4 millimeters of Nitro V, but because of this hollow grind, it is an absolute razor blade here on this edge. Now the Tanto tip up here is not quite as thin of an edge, but that is because this is a marvelous piercing tool. If you're going to do a push cut and then a draw cut, and I've cut with it, I've carried it, this is an excellent tool for cutting. It really, really is. Let's go ahead and weigh it. Now there is no milling on the inside of these tie scales, so I'm guessing this is going to be 4.5 ounces, maybe a little more, somewhere between 4.5 and 5. Excuse me. Sorry guys, my dog is over here banging on stuff and making strange noises. Go on, girl. Excuse me. Go. All right, we're back. All right, between 4.5 and 5. Let's see. 4.7. Okay, right. So there you go. Now that is kind of heavy for a 2.9-inch cutting edge and a 3 and a little bit inch blade. I get that. But again, without milling, that's what you get with full tie. And because the scales are reasonably, they're not like thick, like monstrously thick, but it's thick enough to make a really nice grip, even for hands my size. Women Carry Knives loves this thing because, her smaller hands, this is just a really right size knife. Close profile on this thing is very good. I mean, it's not super duper thin, but what are we talking about? Without the flipper, we're at 1.25 inches. With the flipper, we're at 1.5 inches. The flipper tab could be, with all due respect to Nick Shabazz, a bit of a pocket pecker, but everything is chamfered. Even the edges, right? There's still enough of an edge here to catch your finger, but not enough to cause any bite. They just did a remarkably good job. And I guess that's where we're going to leave it. This is the Nick Chuprin and Robert Carter BroLab, the NCC MK1-RC. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this or any of my knives, feel free to ask down in the comments below. We'll see you next time.